The ways that the speculative vision of the future or the present, as it is now, got it wrong. Lean
Yeah.
into those and sort of play with that. Well, it's done neither of those things, and then you've
Yeah.
got a completely miscast hero. Sorry, Glen Powell, but this is not the role for you.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit.
Steve, so big movie that's out at the moment is The Running Man, the new
Yeah.
adaptation of the Stephen King novel, directed by Edgar Wright, starring Glen Powell. Now, I saw this last week, sort of before it opened, and you said, "Okay, well, wait for me. I want to do this one." It's taken you a week, but here we are. You've seen
Yeah.
it, so where are you on The Running Man?
James, before I launch into this, one of the descriptions of this channel is that there's an Englishman and an American that drink. And I've been trying actually to drink less. But in reviewing this movie and in discussing it, I felt I needed a drink. Here's the thing. I was big fan of the I think it was 1987.
It was.
Schwarzenegger, Running Man. I was really keen on seeing this. Unfortunately, we're getting it out a little bit late because through some personal matters and my mom and some health issues, I didn't get to see it as soon as I would have liked and gotten this out. Having said that, I saw it last night with a friend of mine, and I walked out and looked at him and said, "I think that's the worst movie I've seen in 2025." He said, "Only 2025?"
Oh, ouch. Okay.
Ouch.
Okay.
Yes. And believe me, I did not want to go down that road. I like Edgar Wright. I wanted to enjoy this movie, as I often say. And that's probably what led to me feeling so passionate about this, is that I felt really utter disappointment. This is the lowest letterbox score film movie rating that I've given this year.
Okay, interesting. When people sort of say, "Oh, that's the worst movie I've seen this year," my knee-jerk reaction to people is always, "Well, you need to watch more movies."
I was
Some
going
of
to
the
say,
some of the
you've
crap
seen much
I
worse
see,
than me. Yes, yes.
some of the crap I
choose
see.
what I see, James. I get
Yeah.
to choose and what from what I've chosen to see this year.
Mm.
This is probably my biggest disappointment.
Okay. Interesting. I will say that I am a little bit sort of perplexed by what has happened to Edgar Wright. A little bit. It seems that, in my opinion, the last couple of movies that he's done have lacked that kind of visual energy and sort of kinetic editing style and dynamism.
Je ne sais quoi.
Upon which he built his career. He was already on my radar before Shaun of the Dead. With his TV show Spaced with Simon Pegg, and that carried a lot of that same sort of visual energy into those first films, and Scott Pilgrim as well as that whole Cornetto trilogy, as it's called. Yeah. But I felt that something about the last three films that he has done. There was Last Night in Soho,
which is one of the first films we've done in Deep Dive Movie Reviews. I want
we
to say
did.
It was like the second or third film we reviewed for this channel.
Yeah, that was a really early one, wasn't it? Yeah, I remember that. And then also Baby Driver, which
I liked. I liked Baby Driver.
I remember. I sort of enjoyed the beginning of it. I felt it really kind of sort of fell apart in the second half, but all of those have lacked, in my opinion, the sort of signature of Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, particularly with Last Night in Soho, that it is very technically creative, and they do a lot of these in camera special effects, and particularly with that movie where it is two actresses kind of almost doppelgangering each other and taking over the role and all the rest of it. And I'm like, that's great. I'm glad he is continuing to be innovative. But on screen, it doesn't what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't transmit onto the screen. Right. In the same way. And I want to be careful here, because I'm not saying I want the same thing from Edgar Wright every time. I want to see him grow, and I want to see him evolve, and I see his style age with him.
Yeah.
But you take some other sort of great auteurs and you continue to see their fingerprints on their work as they mature. But particularly with The Running Man, if I didn't know that Edgar Wright directed this, there is almost nothing, I would say, in that movie after a single
are not there. Yeah.
After a single viewing. I don't think there are any clues there to show me that that's an Edgar Wright movie, and that for me that's a big problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. There is, sorry to cut you off there, but you don't feel his fingerprints on this film at all. What I found is a lot of a chaotic, corny mess. And The Running Man, even the 1987 version, is corny, and obviously it's based off the Stephen King, Richard Bachman novella. But for me, I'll start right out by saying I think Glen Powell was miscast in this. I'm
Hmm.
thinking this guy, yes, he can wear a towel like nobody can wear a towel.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. But this, to try to convince me in the first 10 minutes that you're not part of the elite, like you're part of the oppressed class. Are you kidding me? They go to great lengths to show us, there are the haves and the haves nots. There's the 1% and there's the bulk of humanity. And I'm thinking, dude, if you got a body like that, you look like that, there's no way you're on this side of the tracks. You're with a
Mm.
beautiful wife. Okay, so already it's not making sense. Then they try to have this concocted, my daughter's sick, I love my wife, and he just has these. I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to generate this outrage. This is the angry character, but it never comes across to me as realistic. It comes across to me, even my buddy and I were looking at each other when he's interacting, not only with the foreman when he's trying to get his job back, but with the person behind the glass
Oh yeah.
subsequently. He's just acting like an idiot. And I'm thinking, why is this guy like you are not building the empathy I need in order to engage with this character on any level. And I started thinking, well, what character what actor out there would embody this? Like either you go all the way with an Arnold Schwarzenegger built guy and he can just, take out these bad guys as he did in the first movie, or you go with more of a Bruce Willisy diehard guy, the everyman who can kind of um, make things happen both through skill and through luck. What disappointed me in the first like 3 or 4 encounters is we never get the feeling from Glen Powell that he actually thwart these evil guys in any meaningful way. There's always luck that just pops, these random luck moments that just seems to appear for no apparent reason whatsoever. I mean, unlike something that really worked was Bruce Willis in Die Hard, where initially he is able to gun down or kill two of the main guys
Mm.
and send a message to Hans. I'm going to mess you guys up. I would rather have had an everyman, a Chris. I keep coming back to Chris Pratt because I was thinking who could fill this role, who can both be kind of charming and good looking, but also a little bit oafy, like the guy that you want to root for.
Mm.
And I just found in Glen Powell, this is not connecting for me.
Yeah, I mean Ben Richards, the character is supposed to be an underdog, and there's nothing about Glen Powell that screams underdog. And he's
No,
also
no,
supposed to have anger issues. I don't believe for 1 minute that Glen Powell has anger issues. He's so
no.
well put together. He's so level-headed.
Yeah.
He's so sharp and just good, well-mannered, and everything about him. I
He's
like.
GQ. He is GQ.
He is. He's your all-American sort of Texas quarterback kind of guy, and I like Glen Powell. And what I've seen him in to date, I've enjoyed him. He's a really likable screen presence, and I understand that there is a bit of a push to kind of make him a kind of new star, in the Tom Cruise mold, if you like. That's great, but this is not the role for him, because the whole point is that this character, there's nothing about this character that suggests he's going to be any good at this, or that he's going to win, or that he's going to take down the system. He is literally at wit's end. He has no alternative, and so he has no choice but to roll the dice and play this deliberately impossible to win game.
But we can never quite believe it because he doesn't come across as a guy that society has really dealt him a bad
that's what I mean.
hand.
That's what I mean.
It's not connecting. It doesn't work.
Right. And so the character. I mean, people said the same thing. Particularly, Stephen King said the same thing back in '87. He pointed at Schwarzenegger and said, "Well, that's not Ben Richards. That's not the guy." And that's fair enough. There is almost nothing in that movie that was in the book, and so I understand the motivations by Edgar Wright. I believe more than anyone else that the old movie is great, but let's go back to the book because there's a whole different story there that was pretty much ignored first time out that we could actually really get our teeth into. And if you go back and look, I mean, beat for beat, plot wise, this new version of The Running Man is actually a much more faithful adaptation of the book. The main difference, well, there are two big differences. One is the very end, but that's kind of understandable because knowing how the book ends. I went into this one going, well, they're not going to do the ending of the book because you can't end a big budget.
This is a spoiler. What's the ending of the book?
Okay,
I've never read the book actually.
So spoilers: he flies the plane into the building and blows everybody up, including himself. That's how the book ends.
Actually, I would have ended. I would have had more respect for this film if they had done that.
But they're not going to do that. They're not going to go all this way and then have him like sort of kill himself. And you're like, okay, fine. And obviously, flying planes into buildings has become a more sensitive issue in the last sort of 25 years. And you're like, okay, so they're going to do how? So I was kind of going, okay, how are they going to change the ending? What are they going to do? Because it did have one of those trailers that shows you a lot of stuff, and I had seen the trailer, and I'd seen that there was a pretty climactic fight thing going on a plane. I was like, okay, well, that's probably the climax. So I kind of had an idea. So anyway, so that's one thing, is that they changed the ending, and I'll get into my thoughts on their ending in a minute. And then the other thing is just the overall tone, the way I remember it. The Richard Bachman novel, which Stephen King wrote in the 70s, I think, and then had about couldn't get it published for about a decade. Yeah. And it was one of the reasons why he did it. He ended up publishing under a pseudonym. It's the only way he could actually get it out there. It's a real sort of angry young man's novel. It's obviously satirical in theme, in subject matter, but my memory of it is that it's not funny in the same way that Edgar Wright is making his movie funny, or aiming to make his movie funny.
But the 87 version was funny too, so I can see them piggybacking off of that expectation of a measure of humor in it.
Sure. I mean, the 87 one, is high camp, and it's Arnie at his most puntastic. It's all his one-liners and all the rest of it. But considering that, I think their one-line elevator pitch for this movie is, we're not going to do the 87 movie. Right. And we're not remaking the 87 movie. We're going back to the source, back to the novel. If there end up being any similarities between this movie and the 87 movie, I think those are almost coincidental. They were very deliberately saying, we want to do something different. That we felt that there is still an opportunity. And what they end up with is something that lightens the tone of this whole sort of dystopian future, which, let's be honest, we've seen before, and whether it's been pilfered from the novel in other movies, or whether it's just it's just a theme that is as old as time, violence for entertainment's sake, and just anything to keep the masses quiet and subdued and at home. It's like, sure, yeah, we know this, and I don't feel that they really build on that at all. And I don't think there's anything particularly new or insightful in this staging of that. And it almost feels sort of quaint and kind of sort of old-fashioned in its in the way that it sort of stages this, and in the way it represents kind of a sort of dystopian future, which, it should be pointed out, is set in 2025.
So. Yeah, that wasn't lost on me. And I think that was another issue I had with it, why I didn't resonate with the film, was the 87 version. It was just satirical enough that it was like, yeah, we have whiffs of that, but we'll never get to that level of absurdity in our culture and dystopia. In 2025, in our Trump era, and what we're seeing in the world, and what we're seeing with AI, and we're seeing in entertainment, and just, we got The Biggest Loser, and we have a lot of people being humiliated online at increasing levels. Suddenly, it's not as funny anymore. Now, it's not as satirical anymore. It is really just taking where we're at and taking it up half a level. And I think that's why audiences didn't resonate as much with this, because we don't need to see more of what we're seeing on the news and on TV every day. Yes, it was kind of funny and it was creative to have the fat man and the hamster thing. There was elements in this film that, yes, did cause me to chuckle. But by and large, I think people were like, when I go to the movies, I don't want to see the same crap that I'm trying to get away from in my day to day.
Well, I'm not even sure that the movie features the same crap that people are getting away from. I think it's
I don't
I think
know,
it's
but
a
it has a
very
very high, but it has a very high-handed message about the way society is going today. Just turn it off. Just shut it off. Don't watch this. This is polluting your mind, which I agree with.
Sure.
It's
No,
totally
the message
there.
the message is obviously good, and that is the message, obviously. But I think that the representation of the problem in this movie is too quaint and too narrow-minded and too naive. If they wanted to do something about that today, I mean, we're living in an age now where, a former reality host is the president. Not only is he the president, but he's an absolute psychopath. When AI is not only becoming a crutch that everybody uses, but it's becoming so self-aware that it's talking people into killing themselves and things like that. And we are facing far more serious problems than a game show where, because I don't think it's that outrageous. It's like for $1 billion, would you do it? And I think more than ever, people are like, I'd do that for $1 billion. Yeah, sure. I'd do that.
There'd be all kinds of people. This is coming alongside The Long Walk, which I just recently watched about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Both Stephen King, films based on Stephen King novels, both featuring a dystopian, America.
Okay,
Both
I haven't seen The Long Walk.
Both featuring an entertainment gay where people are forced, because of the desperation in their life, to be able to feed their families and take care of their families. So this is a motif that Stephen King has, kind of mined before, which is not a criticism, because I think it's a great one, and I'm a huge Stephen King fan. But to be honest, The Long Walk is a better film. I was more engaged. I mean, it's not a perfect film, and I have a few critiques with it, but by and large, I come away from The Long Walk with a much like, wow, that really it got me viscerally. Like, this is really, whereas this was like comic book on the screen, and it wasn't without its redeeming moments. I mean, Coleman Domingo's MC was entertaining to watch.
I think one of
that
the
as a fan.
things that the 87 movie actually improved upon the source material was with the hunters, or the stalkers, as they're called in the 87 movie. And it made them these kind of larger than life sort of personality kind of villains, who have their own fan bases, whereas the hunters, with Lee Pace's character McCone or whatever his name is, are just so uninteresting.
Yeah.
And to the point where the main one, arguably sort of the great sort of nemesis anti-hero, so wears a mask, and yes, there's a reveal about his identity, and you're like, okay, so it's not a character that we have attached ourselves to before the reveal. So I think it's one of the big improvements that they made in the 87 film, and going back to it, just it makes it more glaringly obvious that in a movie like that, if you want people to like care and become involved, particularly if you've got to think about it from a very practical point of view, week on week, what's bringing audiences back? And especially, yes, you can interact while you're at home, during your day to day, and try and spot him and try and earn money. But it's got to be the stalkers, the hunters, whatever, because they're the returning characters week on week, right? And you've made them so uninteresting that I don't believe for a minute that people would tune in and actually watch the show. I'm more than happy to believe people would sign up to be a contestant because there's so much money on stake. And I think people these days just think, oh yeah, people are quite arrogant these days, and they're like, yeah, I can outsmart this, I can go off grid and do whatever for 30 days. But that people would actually tune in and watch, I don't buy that for a minute, and it's because of the hunters.
James, I'm going to read you verbatim a bullet point I made about the film,
Okay.
just along that line. I said, the hunters are faceless, which leads to a generic quality rather than the celebrity hunters from the first film, which is what I wrote. And as you're saying it, I just want to say, amen, brother, because yeah, if you got Lee Pace in your film with that mane, you
Mm.
reveal him at the beginning and you make him the nemesis through the whole thing. You know, in the 87 version, those stalkers were modeled after wrestling WWF
Yeah,
characters. This
absolutely.
was when WWF was at the pinnacle, the Hulk Hogan days. People got behind those characters, and that's what they were trying to emulate was I'm behind the whatever it was, the Iceman or the hockey player guy or the and
Sub-Zero. Yeah.
they find Sub-Zero. Thank you. It's been a while, and I think at the end, it's not James Brown. Who's the foot? It was
Jim
a real life.
Brown.
Jim Brown was the football player, real life football player who plays the final stalker. These were characters that you really wanted to get behind and you wanted to see die. Whereas
Mm.
nameless, faceless, generic guys, even the guys that had their faces showing, they were like just like the henchmen on the side. And again, I brought it up before with the grenade. It's like Chekhov's gun. You show the gun, and you're going to use the gun. Okay, if you're going to show the grenade, he's going through the box, he finds a grenade. Ooh, this grenade is
Hmm.
really going to be cool. And the payoff was so disappointing. I just thought, why the hell did they even introduce the grenade? It makes no sense. And that's one of my biggest critiques in this film. If there's a lot of corny things that make no sense. I'll tell you right now, when they're clicking through, like he's 2 days in, 4 days in, I'm with my buddy Martin going, oh my God, they're only on day 15. We got 15 more days of this.
It's one of those things where, at the time I was kind of like just sort of enjoying it as it sort of ticked along. And then when it ended, I realized that was probably too long. That was probably 20 minutes too long. But in the moment, I was kind of like, this is fine. This is fine. This is fine. As it has settled, it was a week. It hasn't stayed with me at all.
Yeah.
I think the problems with it are that the the story was interesting back in the 70s when Stephen King wrote it. We're at a point in society now where it's just not shocking enough. It's just
Yeah.
not challenging to our morality and sensibilities enough to be posed this kind of water cooler question. What would you do in that situation? Would you report on the contestant? Would you sign up to be on it? I don't think anyone. I don't think anybody is sort of sensationalized or surprised enough to engage with it. I think there was an opportunity to really be smart and to look at society today and draw upon just how crazy and how extreme and how divisive and how violent society and how sort of inhumane society has become today, and really address that. And it's done none of that. And I understand what they wanted to do is kind of go back and make this. Well, then almost make it as a kind of period piece. Then,
Yeah.
lean into the kind of the quaintness and the ways that the speculative vision of the future, or the present as it is now, got it wrong. Lean into those and sort of play with that. Well, it's done neither of those things, and then you've got a completely miscast hero. Sorry, Glen Powell, but this is not the role for you. And then you change the ending to something that's just you're just kind of like, okay, there's going to be a rebellion. It almost has a whiff about it that you're like, oh, were you hoping there might be a sequel to this? I mean, how do you have it? It's like the TV show Prison Break. It's like the premise of the show ends when you break out of prison. You can't do another one.
But they kept trying.
Oh, they kept trying, and so you do a season on the run, and then season 3 you were back in a different prison again. And you're just like, no, I'm sorry, but the whole idea was that he comes in tattooed and he has a map. Anyway,
Well, this emulates the problem that the first film had, because as much as I like the underground being run by Mick Fleetwood and Dweezil Zappa in the first film, it's like all we got to do is get to the antenna, and once we get the signal out, everybody will join our side, and you get kind of that feeling at the end of this. Whereas if we just a whole chain of events that got him back to Killian, it was so absurd. And then somehow this is going to be the revolution that topples this whole situation. Would have been much better to just have a young child carry on and pick up a leaflet and like they're going to carry the torch forward. And we
Mm.
don't know what's going to happen. Rather than having this, oh yeah, this one brave act suddenly changed everything. I mean, granted, it did show the wife in the supermarket and sees him, and maybe he's now the new Martin Luther King Jr., the underground, but again, it's just an absurdity that you think there's so much more that they could have done. And considering the situation of authoritarianism that we're seeing and the very social issues that we're trying to address,
Mm.
make it something that we as the viewers can actually grasp onto. Whereas at the end, suddenly we're back in a movie and this actually has no bearing on us whatsoever.
I mean, we're living in a moment now where the goalposts are being shifted so desperately by the media day after day after day in order to protect, an authoritarian leader who has done all kinds of absolutely disgraceful, disgusting things. Fox News now talking about women between 15 and 40 as a demographic. It's like, hang on a minute. You're already legitimizing the women of the age of 15 as being, it's like, I see what you're doing. Couple of days before the information comes out, it's like, no, 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 no. I don't believe that exposing the Running Man for being the corrupt show this will generate any more than a kind of or even just like, well, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of already knew it. Like, you're telling us wrestling's fake? Like we didn't know that already?
Right, exactly. Exactly. And I think it's a real disappointment that they didn't foresee these problems ahead of time and be like, we've got to update this.
Yeah.
Agreed. we can't just do the book. I know that that's what we came in to do, but we can't because it just won't resonate. And I think it's one of many, many reasons why the movie has underperformed. I think there are other reasons. I think it's been caught in the crossfire of a corporate merger, a far more interesting story than in The Running Man. But I think that it's a star that they banked on who's too early to open a movie, and also just a premise that just feels, just tin-eared, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. James, we got to draw this to a close. What are we going to use as a system of measurement to grade The Running Man?
Well, I think you've probably mentioned it already, just sort of like poorly utilized grenades, surely.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. How many poorly utilized grenades are you going to give Edgar Wright's The Running Man?
Well, this is going to be, I think, actually one of those rare moments when you've talked me down. Quite often I talk you up somehow, but you've talked me down. I mean,
scores.
Yeah, I came out of it like about a week ago, and I thought, yeah, it's got problems. Yeah, I thought it's fine. Yeah, it was fine. It's got some problems, but unlike the other big movie that's come out recently, Predator: Badlands, the other big '80s Schwarzenegger movie that's the franchise is still going, that came out the same year as Running Man did, where that, although I didn't like some of the choices that were made, it's still a decent movie. It's still like an okay movie. It's just I just had issues with some of the details. This, especially discussing it with you, you realize more and more it's not a very good movie. It's a wasted opportunity. It's a fumbled opportunity, and it has just completely missed the target and just seems blissfully unaware of the times in which we are living, which is the first rule of making a dystopian science fiction satire, is that you're addressing today's problems through the veneer of a future world, and they've completely stumbled at that first hurdle, which pains me no end, because I wanted this to be good for all the reasons that it isn't really. I like everybody involved. I like the book, the source material, for what it was, and the idea of reinvigorating this franchise was an appealing one or enticing one, but yeah. So I did give this a sort of a fairly sort of non-committal 3 when I came out of it, but I'm going to drop that now to a 2.
Two mishandled grenades.
2 mishandled grenades as a mark of my disappointment.
Well, it's good that mishandled grenades is our unit of measurement, because this is a totally mishandled movie. The reason I'm going to give it 1 star instead of 0 stars is I didn't want anybody thinking I had misunderstood and just put 0. I want a 1. I think it actually has more impact.
You can put a
And
half if you want.
I thought about that, but here's the reason why I'm going to a full star. And I'm going to give my short justification because I think we've already gone a little too long in this review. But I thought the supporting characters were much better and more fun to watch than the lead character. Anytime Glen Powell was with Michael Cera or Coleman Domingo or William H. Macy, uh, Josh Brolin, it was a much more film to watch. Once it became Glenn on the Run, it just became a comedy of errors that I ended up not finding particularly interesting. So I'm going to give it 1 mishandled grenade out of 5. My lowest rating for 2025.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'll
But that's
now
what
have to
James
send you. I'll have to send you a whole list of 1-star movies that I've sat
stars.
through this
Yes,
year.
yeah. I don't want to do that. So, hey, that's what James and I think about Edgar Wright's The Running Man. Obviously, we're very disappointed, but there's people that love this film and think it's quite good. You may be one of them. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment box below. James?
Yeah, I mean, do you agree with me that sort of Edgar Wright seems to have kind of lost his identity or lost his ability to sort of stamp his signature on his work? Or are you willing to defend it and point out to me some elements of this movie that tell you that this is an Edgar Wright movie? Because it felt incredibly anonymous this time from someone who's been very, very good in the past and easily identifiable. So let us know.
Till next episode. Bye-bye.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be. You're